Welcome back everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's course we continue our preparation for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administration exam. We're going to wrap up our mail section today by sending a test mail through our configured SMTP/IMAP service so that a user has a mailbox created and has an address that receives that email. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at a couple of different ways that we can configure to send mail from the command line. There are 100 different clients that we can configure and point to our server using a GUI that will send and receive email. But it's from a system administration standpoint, you really want to be able to do that at the command line. And I'm going to show you two ways that you can do it regardless of the distribution. We'll talk briefly about one way that you can do it depending on if you're using a Debian or an Ubuntu system. So from the command line, there's really two ways that we can send an email, the easiest way to send it. So what we want to do is we want to do a yum install on mutt. If you're using a Debian or an Ubuntu-based system, then of course you can do a sudo apt-get install on mutt. In our case, mutt should probably already be installed, and it is. And mutt just really allows us to use this particular utility to send emails to our configured mail server. And since we're sending it from the same server that we're on, all of our configurations, if they're configured right, if SMTP and IMAP and IMAP-S are working, then our email will route appropriately from within our server. So all mutt is used for is for reading emails from a Linux terminal and mailboxes, as well as being able to read POP and IMAP servers, which we can configure as well. But let's use mutt to send an email. Let's go ahead and clear here, and we'll do a mutt-s, and I'm logged in as the root user. So let's do this is my test email to a user called user. And then all we have to do is tell it user at tcox6 or user at localhost in our case, because we're right here, or user at tcox6.mylabserver.com. And this will send the email to us. And right now what we don't want is we don't necessarily want to get any error messages. So we're just going to pipe that to dev null. And it should send that email to the user. And now if we do an ls-al, if you remember earlier, we didn't have an mbox directory or a mailbox directory created. Now we should have a mail directory, which we do. So if we look at that mail direct, well, we're not actually going to look at the mail directory. Let's exit out of here where we're now our mail user is user. And all we're going to do is type in the word mutt. Mutt will tell me this is a test email to my user called user. And if I hit enter, it tells me that it's from root at tcox6.mylabserver.com and it's to user at tcox6.mylabserver.com. So we received and routed the email out through our DNS lookup into our SMTP server, which created the appropriate directory, and we're using mutt to review the email that was sent to a user from another user. Whether it was locally or off of this mail server makes no difference, because we treated that particular email as if it were off of this box and we're going to a known location, which we've configured. Otherwise, it wouldn't have answered and routed the email appropriately. So for example, during our configuration, we identified this server as tcox6, tcox6.mylabserver.com, because we happen to be using a DNS entry for our Linux Academy lab servers. So we're going to go ahead and delete this so that we don't get messed up when we're removing that particular email. So let's go back to quit. We're going to delete the message, and that's been deleted. And the reason we're going to do that is because I want to show you another way to send an email message that has an attachment using mutt. And let's echo out that test to test.txt. And then we want to do a mutt-s test attachment -a and we want to do root test.text. So that -a just means attachment to the user at tcox6.mylabserver.com, and then anything that comes out to dev null. Let's make sure we have this in the right order. -a and /root test.text. Okay, so make sure that when you're doing your mutt attachment, it used to be the other way around. The attachment was before the user. In this case, it happens to be user and then the attachment. So if we exit from here and we do a mail, or a mutt command rather, we should see that we have a test attachment. And if we hit enter, it tells us that we have a plain attachment, which it includes or embeds in our email right here for test. So now we use mutt, for example, to send a command line email, but universally, regardless of the distribution, regardless of what might be included or able to be installed, you can send an email using a telnet command. And that's where the configuration goes into, where we looked at how a system has to identify itself. So for example, let's do a telnet, and if telnet isn't installed, you need to install it. We're going to do a telnet localhost SMTP. And this tells us that this is a postfix SMTP database, and we have to say hello, and it's going to say, hey, wait a minute, you need to tell me the host name of the server that you're connecting from. So we'll say hello, and then tcox6. And it should automatically do a reverse DNS lookup and tell me you're on tcox6.mylabserver.com. Now we can say we're going to send mail from tcox at let's just say linuxacademy.com, which doesn't make any difference at this point because we're local to the server, we're connected to the server, we're just identifying ourselves. So the sender is okay. And then we're going to say that we want to send it to user at, in this case, localhost or tcox6.mylabserver.com. Or we need to tell it the receipt to, like we did the mail from, the receipt to, mail from and receipt to, and then user at tcox6.mylabserver.com, which is now okay. And then we're going to indicate that we're going to send some data, and all we're going to do is type in our message. This is a message for user. Thanks. And then when we're done, we indicate with a single period, and then we quit. And it should then send the mail in the user spool, which in our case, you can see the var spool mail user. And if we do a mutt, we now have an email directly from there that this is a message for user. So this particular user was able to send a command from tcox at linuxacademy.com. As long as my server is listening on SMTP, it was able to identify itself as far as who it was from with the appropriate negotiation, which we indicated was HELO, and then a domain name. And when we just entered HELO, it told us that, hey, I need to know who you are. Then we indicated who it was going to, that we were sending data, and then we were able to successfully send. And then obviously we can see from within the directory that that mail had been created for this particular user. So for setting up SMTP, restricting access to SMTP by adding the configurations, and using a client a couple of different ways to send mail to our SMTP service, we're able to see that mail gets delivered as we expect it to from a command line client. And that's all there is to our mail section. My name is Terry for Linux Academy.